In 1 Samuel chapter number 24, David has defeated Goliath, and he now has a lot of people who want him to become king. A lot of people want David to be the king to replace Saul. And this upsets Saul so greatly that Saul's like, you know what? I have to kill David. I got to find him, and I've got to kill him. And so David is on the run for his life. He ends up in this cave, and Saul comes into the same cave that David was in. Not because he knew David was there, but because he had to go to the restroom. Like, seriously, you cannot make this up. In verse number 3, it says Saul needed to go to the restroom, comes into the cave that David was in. David had a choice, though. He had a choice to kill Saul, to capture Saul, to do whatever, or to let him go. And so he lets him go, and then once Saul gets away from the cave, far enough away that it's safe, David goes out, and he calls out to Saul, and he speaks to Saul, and that's what we see starting here in verse number 9, this exchange, this interaction. It says, David said to Saul, "Why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you." It's amazing because David and Saul both had people speaking into their lives. David and Saul both had people giving them advice. And Saul listened, but David did not. And part of being a great leader is having the discernment of when to listen and when to ignore. Part of having a great leadership mentality or being Christ-like is knowing when you need to listen and when you need to ignore. Not every time somebody speaks something into your life do you need to do what they said to do. But then there are times when somebody speaks into your life, and it's like, well, how do I know the difference? It takes discernment. It takes the Holy Spirit. David said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you, so that there is nothing in my hand to indicate I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs that you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. See, here we see two men with two completely different hearts. We see Saul, who has allowed bitterness, who has allowed unforgiveness, who has allowed insecurity, has allowed pride, has allowed fear to cause him to try to actively kill David. But then we also see David, who could have captured Saul, who could have attacked him, who could have killed him, but instead, David showed him love, grace, and compassion. Two men with completely different hearts. You have Saul, whose heart was rooted in bitterness. You have David, whose heart was rooted in forgiveness. Two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think that it is important to note that David had done absolutely nothing wrong to Saul. David had done nothing to warrant Saul trying to kill him. And it's important to point that out because we can kind of understand when somebody is doing something bad to us because we did something bad to them. Right? Whenever we've wronged somebody else, we can understand when they want to wrong us. We may not like it, but we can kind of understand it. But where we struggle the most to show grace and to show forgiveness is when somebody like Saul has shown us malice for absolutely nothing that we did. When somebody does something to us that we did not deserve because we had done nothing to them. Am I the only person who's ever had somebody do something to you that maybe you didn't deserve because you had not done anything to them? Anybody like, yeah, I've had people wrong me. Sometimes we have to admit it, like, yeah, you know, I did that. I did something to them. I get it. I understand it. But then there's times where we did absolutely nothing, and it still seems like something's happening. And so David, he had this attack on his life that was undeserved, but he showed a grace and forgiveness that was unearned. So for this week of Mood, I want to talk to you on the subject, undeserved and unearned. Let's pray together. God, I thank you for today, and I just thank you for who you are. I thank you that we have the opportunity and the privilege to meet with you today. I pray that you would speak to each and every one of our hearts. I pray that you would help each and every person that's here and joining us online, not to watch and to listen to me, but to watch and to hear from you. Lord, I believe that you can speak to each and every one of us exactly what you have for us. Help us to take it and to apply it to our lives, and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, and everybody said, amen. Now, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever had somebody who you trusted that convinced you to do something because they didn't want to do it themselves? Like they told you that it was going to be fun and that was going to be exciting so that you would do that thing, but then once you actually did it, you realized that you had been deceived, that it wasn't really all that fun. And the thing about when this happens is it's generally somebody who we trust, right? It's somebody with a sweet demeanor, somebody who we love, who we think would never do this to us. Somebody like a person named Nicole Barker. Like you never would think that somebody so sweet could do this, because she's my bride. She's the mother of my children, right? She's my ride or die. And whenever this type of thing happens, it's always shocking. You're like, wait, what just happened? I got bamboozled by this person that I trusted. And they end up getting you to do this thing and get you to do the dirty work, or in our case, the dirty diaper, by causing you to think that it was going to be fun, it was going to be exciting. Because I've always thought, because I'm naive, I've always thought we had this understanding and agreement that, you know what, whoever discovers a dirty diaper is the one who handles it. It's called teamwork. It's what you do, right? Whoever discovers it is the one that handles it. And that's what I always thought was the agreement. But I found out a couple weeks ago that this was not the case any longer. I never got the memo, but apparently that's no longer the case. Because we're sitting downstairs with Elijah, and Judah, our oldest son, is upstairs napping, and we start to hear him move a little bit. And I asked Nicole, I said, hey, babe, did Judah have a dirty diaper before he went to bed, before he took his nap? And she said, I think so. You know, the days kind of run together now. I'm not really sure, but I think that he did. And it's important to know this, because if he had a dirty diaper before he went to bed, then he's going to wake up fine. If he did not, then he's going to wake up with a dirty diaper. So before I volunteered to go upstairs and get Judah, I wanted to know. So I asked this question, and then she could tell I was trying to figure it out. So then she says to me, she says, well, Elijah has a dirty diaper, so I'm going to go change him, and then I'll go upstairs and get Judah. And she knew that there was no way I was going to let that happen, because we're a team. I'm not going to let her have to handle both children. So I was like, no, it's okay. I'll go get Judah. You take care of Elijah, because she's sneaky. She knew what she was doing. So then I'm starting to walk up the stairs, and as I start up the stairs, I asked one more time. I said, babe, did Judah have a dirty diaper or not before he went to bed? And she was like, uh-huh. So I'm like, okay. So I start up the stairs. I get to the top of the stairs, and I'm like, but in my mind, my wife would never lie to me. So I have to be smelling things, right? So I go and I open his door, and literally as I open the door, I went, oh, come on. Come on. And Judah looks at me and smiles. So now, because my plan was, because see, I remembered that 10 minutes before he woke up, she had gone upstairs to get something for Elijah. And this was more than 10 minutes ago, I know. And she came back downstairs, and so she left it for me. So I go, and my plan was, well, if she's going to do that to me, I'm just going to turn around and leave. But I couldn't, because Judah is staring right at me, smiling. And if I would have turned around and left, he would have started crying. And because I'm a compassionate, loving father, I didn't want him to have to cry. So I was trapped. I'm trapped in this room going through trials and tribulations by myself. And so I fixed everything, and I come down the stairs, and I'm not very happy about it. And I said to Nicole, I was like, well, at least you had to change a dirty diaper too. And this joker looks at me and says, actually, it was a false alarm. So I was the only one on daddy diaper duty. But it's okay. But what happened was I go in there and I wanted to leave, but I couldn't because I was trapped when Judah saw me. Judah looks at me, and I knew in that moment there was no way I was getting out of that situation. And the same way that I was trapped with Judah, what we need to realize is that bitterness also traps. Bitterness traps. Bitterness trapped the life of Saul. The entire life of Saul. You're like, how could you trap an entire life? Because it absolutely consumed him. It trapped him, and it dictated everything that he did. And it says in verse number 10 that David told him, this day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. While Saul's bitterness caused him to search for and kill David, it ended up getting him right into David's hands. Saul was searching for David, trying to kill him, and it actually led him right into David's hands. And this bitterness in Saul's heart completely consumed his life. It consumed him. It dictated everything that he did, every emotion that he felt, every decision that he made, everything that he did from that day forward was consumed by David, because that's what bitterness does. Bitterness traps us into a war that we're fighting on our own. It traps us into a war that we think that we're fighting against somebody else. If you would have asked Saul, he would have told you that he was fighting against David. But the truth is, he was fighting against himself. David had zero interest in fighting against Saul. He had the perfect opportunity, and he still said, "No, what? I don't want anything to do with that. I'm not even dealing with that. I'm not dealing with this. Saul's on his own." And Saul consumed himself with this bitterness towards David that dictated everything that he did. Because bitterness consumes you. When you're bitter and you think that it's something small and you think that it's something that's insignificant, that won't affect anything, but it consumes your life, and it dictates your decisions, and it dictates your relationships, and it dictates the choices that you make. It even dictates your happiness. Some of us cannot be happy because we're so bitter. Some of us cannot be happy because we're so bitter about what somebody else did to us, and it's completely wiping out everything in our lives. It'll cause us to fall into a trap of thinking that we set a trap for somebody else, but it actually was a trap for us. Bitterness will cause us to set traps for somebody else that we end up falling to on our own. Because Saul thought that his bitterness towards David would be able to trap David, but it ended up just consuming him. It didn't even affect him at all. Didn't bother him at all. David was on the run, but David had completely given that thing over. He had completely forgiven that thing and released it. So now the only one being affected by this bitterness was Saul. He thought it was for David, but it turned out just being for him. A lot of times we're bitter towards somebody, and we think that our bitterness towards them is going to affect them, but the hard truth is bitterness only affects the person that is bitter. It doesn't affect the other person. They go on with their life. A lot of times, the person that we're bitter towards doesn't even know that they did anything to us. Or if they did, guess what? They don't care. The only one who cares is you. And then you allow it to just fester and build up in your life, and it ends up consuming you. In fact, the hard reality is that bitterness says more about the heart of the person who's bitter than it does the person who they're bitter against. We have to stop giving people the power. Stop giving people control over our relationships, over our happiness, over our decisions, over our joy, over our peace. We've given our peace over into the hands of people who should not have that kind of power. Those people do not deserve to have the power over you to hold your peace in their hands. Whereas one look at you one look at them and you can completely lose your peace, completely lose your joy. Saul thought that his bitterness that was driving this expedition of revenge against Saul was going to lead him to joy and lead him to happiness. He thought that this bitterness that was leading him to constantly search for David, constantly try to find David, constantly try to attack David. He thought that it was going to make him happy. But instead, it ended up destroying him. Completely destroyed him. Completely wiped him out. The very thing that he thought would make him happy. The very thing that he thought would bring him joy. The very thing that he thought was going to be the answer to the problems. But it destroyed him. And if we're honest with ourselves this morning, if we're willing to take back the mask and to admit and say, hey, listen, I'm not perfect. I don't get it right all the time. I don't always have the right answers. I don't always have the right solutions. If we're willing to pull that back, we have to admit that the enemy has gotten us to believe that lie a lot of times too. That if I can just get back at this person, if I can just get even with them, if I can get back at them, then I'll be happy. If I can get even, then I'll find some joy in my heart. Then I'll feel fulfilled. I'll feel caught up. Right? We're like, man, if I can just get even with my family, if I can just get even with my ex, if I can just get even with the person that betrayed my trust, then I'll be happy. Then I'll have some happiness in my life. I'll have some peace in my life. If I could just get back at them. Right? Like, yeah, I know I'm bitter right now, but once I get it, once I get back at them, then I'm going to be happier. I'm the only one who's ever done this before, because I tell you I have. Like, man, how can I get back at them? How can I make them feel the same way that I feel right now? How can I make them experience the heartache that I'm feeling right now? Some of us are smiling because we know that it's true. We're like, man, how can I get back at them? Oh yeah, they broke my heart when they cheated on me, so let me show up with my person over here. Flaunt them in their face, try to show them off to them. If I could just get even, then I'll be happy. If I can just get back at them, then we'll be all caught up. If I can just do something to them to make them suffer the way that they've made me suffer, then it'll all be okay. And one thing we have to learn is that you can never trust your tongue when you're bitter. You can never trust your tongue when you're bitter. You got to learn to hush until you're healed. Don't go around saying things. Don't go around doing things. Don't go around trying to make things happen, because you will think that it's going to be okay, but all it does is make it worse. You can never trust yourself when you're in those bitter moments. And maybe I'm the only one, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who's never heard somebody say, truthfully, never heard somebody say, oh, I am so much better because I'm so bitter. I'm having such a better day because I allowed that small offense to come into my life. My marriage is stronger because I've been holding a grudge. My relationships are richer because I've been so offended. I'm happier. I'm so much closer to God because I'm so bitter. Feel so much closer to Him today. Wow, you've been reading your Bible? No, I'm just so bitter towards that person. Makes you closer to God. Yes. Never heard somebody say that. Never. I'm happier. I'm making a bigger difference in the world because I'm so bitter. I'm changing lives because I'm so offended. Because I have so many grudges and so much bitterness in my heart. I'm making such a difference in the life of people. I have never heard somebody say that. Because bitterness is never better. You can never be better when you're bitter. You can never be healed when you're bitter. You think that being bitter is going to make you feel better, but instead it makes you feel worse. And the longer you're bitter towards that person, and the longer that it dictates your life, and the longer that it controls you, it ends up completely wiping you out. And it brings no solution. Bitterness brings absolutely no solution to our lives. The more bitter we are, the worse that it is. The more bitter we are, the longer it takes to heal. The more bitter we are, the longer it takes to get past it. The more bitter we are, the longer it takes for us to even find joy. But we think that our bitterness is going to make us happy. We allow our bitterness to be the driving force for our decisions, and it should never drive anything. So we're like, wait, why can't I be happy? Why can't I enjoy my job? Because you're still bitter towards your boss. It's hard, right? Because we're going to work on Monday. Why is my marriage so dysfunctional? Because you're still bitter about what they said to you 6 years ago. Why can't I get past this thing? Because you're harboring the bitterness in your heart. And the more we hold the bitterness in our heart, the more it continues to bring us down. Bitterness never makes us better, which is why we have to make a constant effort to remind ourselves over and over and over and over again that your life is too short. Your calling is too great to allow bitterness to continue to hold you back. Some of us are being so held back by our bitterness. It took me probably 5 years to get over something, and I was just bitter. But I didn't know I was bitter. I thought I was just going on with my life. But the reality was I was so bitter towards that person that I had continued to hold on to it to where when they experienced misfortune, I was happy. Now, how messed up is that? How much would you like it if somebody was happy when you experienced misfortune? And I was like, God, why can't I go into the next level? Like, why can't I experience something greater? Why can't I go somewhere greater in my walk with you? And God said, because you're so bitter. And you're holding on to your bitterness. And God don't like ugly. He's not going to continue to bless you when you're remaining so bitter and trying to ruin somebody else's life. So, some of us were like, God, can you please bless me with a new car? If I could pull up to work in a new car, they would be so upset. I can't wait to see the smile on their face. God, bless me with a new car so that I can get back at the person I'm bitter towards. God, bless me so that I can flaunt it in their face and get back at them. God, why aren't you blessing my life? God, because God's like, I'm not going to be the avenue that you use to try to get back at somebody. Like, why can't I go forward? Why can't I take another step? Why can't I get beyond this thing? Because you're making the conscious effort to continue to hold on to it. And until we're willing to fully release it and to let it go, we'll never be able to get past that thing. We'll never be able to move beyond it. Bitterness just traps us in this cycle that is never ending, and it dictates and it controls everything in our lives. We think that it'll only control that relationship. No, it controls the next relationship, and it controls the one after that, and it controls the one after that, until we choose to let it go, till we choose to release it and to free ourselves from it. And hear me on this. I'm not saying that what they did not hurt you. I'm not even saying that they don't deserve what's coming to them. I'm just saying that we've all done things we need grace and forgiveness for. We've all done things and made decisions and choices and affected people's lives that we needed grace to be shown for. And the more conscious and aware we are of our constant need for grace, the more freely we'll give it. And the more that we give it, the more we'll experience the freedom that comes with it. The more that we're willing to forgive somebody else, because listen, the truth of the matter is, I need grace and forgiveness just as much as the person I was bitter towards. I may not need it from that person, but I still need it. I may not need them to show me grace and forgiveness, but I need somebody over here to show me grace and forgiveness. I need the person who I hurt 10 years ago to forgive me the same way the person who hurt me needs me to forgive them. And the more that we learn that we need grace, that we need forgiveness, that we need God to do something in our heart and forgive us, the more freely we are to give it. And the more we give grace and forgiveness, the more it frees us. The more it frees us. Because bitterness traps us. Bitterness traps us in a cycle, but forgiveness frees us. Bitterness traps, but forgiveness, it always frees. It always frees. It said in verse 11, "See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. He said, I cut the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. There is nothing to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing. See, David freed Saul, which in turn freed David of any wrongdoing. Forgiveness is always a choice. It's always a choice. God, help me to forgive them. It's a choice. God, why won't you help me forgive them? It's a choice. Forgiveness is always a choice, and it's not easy, but it always brings freedom. Always brings freedom. And I'm not talking about just telling somebody you forgive them, right? Because we'll do this. We'll say, I forgive you, knowing good well you don't forgive them. You know good well you do not forgive them. I forgive you. Let me create this fake account. I want to see if I can catfish them. Let me see. I forgive you, but then going and trying to, you don't forgive them. It's nice, and we feel good when we tell somebody we forgive them. Feel good about ourselves. We can come to church, and we can feel good about ourselves. The pastor can preach about forgiveness like today, and we're like, oh, I don't even need to hear this because I'm such a good Christian. I already forgave them. Like, I already forgave that person that hurt me. I don't need to hear about but you know good well you didn't forgive them. Because if you saw them in a dark alley by themselves, you start rolling the sleeves up, pulling out the earrings. I know you, because I'm the same way. You know good well you didn't forgive them. I'm not saying where you just say that you forgive someone. You know the true test to know if you've really forgiven someone? The true test. You're like, you want to say like, I forgave this person, but you want to check your heart? Because sometimes we need to check our heart. The true test to see if you've actually forgiven someone is when you have the chance to get back at them and you choose not to. When you have the opportunity to get back at that person and you make the decision to let it go. That's how you know you've truly forgiven somebody. When you can go and you can say, you know what? I've completely forgiven that person. And I'm going to let it go. Right now, they're already struggling. They're sad. They're down just like I was when they kicked me. I can go and I can kick them and make them hurt even worse than I did. But now I've forgiven them. And choose to let it go. Because it's a choice. Forgiveness is a choice. And realize this. If the roles would have been reversed, if David would have come into the cave that Saul was hiding in, Saul would have killed David. Absolutely no questions asked. Saul would have killed David. You're like, well, how do you know that? Because he tried on multiple occasions to kill David. He would have absolutely killed David. And too often, we do things to other people just because it's what they would do to us. Too often we do things to other people because we feel like they would do it to us. Well, you know, they would lie to me, so I'm going to lie to them. They would gossip about me, so I'm going to gossip about them. They would invite everybody else to the party except for me, so I'm going to invite everybody else to the party except for them. They would say hi to everybody else in the party except for me. I'm going to say hi to everybody else but them. Make them feel real bad. But we're called not to be like everybody else. We're called to be in this world, but not of this world. That means if they would look at you nasty, you smile at them. If they would say something nasty to you, you say, God bless you. If they would do something to you, you choose to do the opposite. We're in this world, but we're not of this world. That means if they would lie about you, if they would gossip, if they would attack you, then you show them grace, love, and offer hope. Because I'm not like you. I'm not like you, and I've chosen to let that thing go, and I'm refusing to remain bitter. If the roles would have been reversed, Saul would have killed David. But David said, no, I've truly forgiven this man. I have truly forgiven him, and I've freed myself through my forgiveness. By the way, look, here's the proof. I could have done something to you, but I chose not to. Chose not to. It's a decision. It's not just saying that you forgive someone, but it's truly forgiving them. It's not just thinking that you forgive someone, but that you truly forgive them. And my prayer for you this morning is that you will begin to heal from things and people who never apologize. My prayer is that you will begin to heal I can't forgive them yet they didn't apologize. I can't forgive them yet. They're not even sorry. They're still doing the same thing. David knew that Saul was still going to try to kill him, but David still said, you know what? I forgive you. You're still coming after me, man, but I forgive you. I've let it go. Got to learn to heal from things that people never even apologize for, and to make a decision that even though I didn't deserve what you did, I choose to give you forgiveness that you did not earn. I didn't deserve it, but you can't earn it. And that's exactly what David did. But even greater than David, it's what Jesus did. See, because David's good and all, and David's a man after God's own heart, but Jesus is our model example. And Jesus, who was hanging on a cross, that people that he was dying for crucified him to, and he didn't deserve it. He never deserved it, but yet he's still hanging on this cross that he does not deserve to be on by the people like you and me that put him on it when he didn't deserve it. And he still cried out in Luke 23:34 and said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. Why do we show forgiveness to someone who did something to us that we didn't deserve? Because Jesus gave us forgiveness that we didn't earn. Why can I forgive someone? Like, I didn't deserve the attack. Even though you did not deserve the attack that happened on your life, it still demands your forgiveness. May we grow to the place where we can go throughout life and understand that even though somebody hurt us in a way that we didn't deserve, I'm still going to give you forgiveness that you didn't earn because I've been given forgiveness that I didn't earn. I'm able to show you grace and forgiveness that's unearned, even though you came against me undeserved, because Jesus showed me forgiveness that I didn't earn, that I could never earn, even though he went through pain that he didn't deserve. The forgiveness that each and every one of us live in our walk with Christ and our salvation, that forgiveness was unearned. And it came from Jesus having to experience a pain that was undeserved. He never deserved to go through what he went through, but he went through it for you and me, so that we could be forgiven in a way that we did not earn, so that we could then show forgiveness to others who didn't earn it as well.